advertise a little bit as an installation of sorts of us in the bar officers. I'm not really into self-aggrandizement, so sort of informally, I'm going to try to point out the other bar officers that are present. Where's my Vice President, Jody Sachs? Can you step forward? And there we go. She's my president-elect, excuse me. And Jody works for Chandler, Britt, and Jay. She does family law. Our Vice President is right next to her, Danielle. Mace. New mom-ish as well. She also works for Chandler, Britt, and Jay, doing criminal and family. Also present is Amina Bakari. There we go. Green. She works in the Board Office, District Attorney with Division 1, Judge Hutchinson. And also,
we just started a juvenile division of the bar this year. Kelly Couts is our president. We've had our first meeting, but we encourage everyone to join. Anyone who's ever done juvenile law, you know that it's a completely different world. So we've lined up some good speakers, some good educational programs, some good CLEs. So we would love to have you guys.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and get to some of the programming here. As you can see on the television screens around you, Gwinnett Habitat for Humanity. I was lucky enough to be part of Leadership Gwinnett class of 2016. One of my classmates, where's Brent? There we go. Greatest class ever, right? For those of you familiar with Leadership Gwinnett 2016. No? No. Objections? 2020. Oh, 2020, right. Brent Bohannon is the executive director of Gwinnett Habitat for Humanity, and every year the Bar Association links itself with a charity or nonprofit in the community. And this year we decided to select Gwinnett Habitat to be our beneficiary. So Brent, if you don't mind coming up. Oh, it's quite play.
Congratulations on 30 years of building homes, communities, and hope throughout Gwinnett County, and your bold plans for the future.
We're so excited that we started a repair program. We've served families that are in need of repairs because of low income, but mostly because they're elderly, disabled, or veterans. Gwinnett Habitat for Humanity serves families here in our community that are in need of affordable housing. We're providing home ownership for those families that typically could not afford it. We worked with our community to bring people together to provide the funds to build and the volunteers to build, and then we sell that home to low-income families with an interest-free mortgage, and this gives them that hand up that they need. Many of our families would not be able to afford a home if it wasn't for Habitat in our program, so we're really glad that we could give that opportunity for families right here in our community.
Proper shelter creates jobs, revitalizes neighborhoods, and attracts employers, all while bringing transformative benefits to families and developing resiliency in communities.
One of the best things about being involved with Habitat is not only is it local, but they get to see that kind of change in the immediate community. They get to help folks. So it's a great opportunity for people to not only be able to give, but to, with their hands, be able to go out and truly make that kind of a difference within their own community.
Gwinnett Habitat makes our community better in a number of ways. In economic development, really for every home that you provide to a young family, it's just like starting a small business, because when a family is adequately housed, then that family can contribute to the quality of life and to economic development in the community. The young people can go to school, the adults can go to work. Habitat demonstrates that in Gwinnett, we care about everybody. Nobody's left behind.
I live now in a small 2-bedroom. I have 4 kids. In my apartment, I can't play with my kids in the apartment because a lot of cars, because I'm scared. Now they have on compound, they play freely. That's why Gwinnett County Habitat, they give me now again, they give opportunity for me and my kids.
There's nothing like a home for a family to create not just a visible sign of stability, but also a place that's safe for kids to grow up, for a place for the family to have as their home place. There's no doubt that having good housing that people feel like is a stable place to be, that frees families and individuals to focus on other parts of their lives.
I think for me personally, I started school right now, so I think I don't have to work full time, you know, because since the mortgage is much less than the apartments we are paying right now. So I think I'll have more studying time and I'll have more for school and helping the kids with the school and yeah.
I can't imagine what my life would be without having had that one place that I knew I was going home to each evening. And my wish for every child in Gwinnett County would be to have that same experience.
So we're really excited about the opportunity to really provide better homes for our community and ultimately provide brighter futures right here in Gwinnett County. Thank you so much. We're so excited to be partners for this year with the Bar Association. We're excited to be involved, and we're going to get you guys involved as much as we can on our work sites. I want to tell you a little bit about the need. You heard kind of our solution through the video, but I want to share a little bit about the need here in Gwinnett County. It's estimated that 63% of people that are employed in Atlanta make $40,000 or less a year. If you spend only 30% of your income, it's very difficult to afford housing, especially housing that you own. And so we estimate that there's a shortage of affordable housing units of about 89,000 here. I'm sorry. Is that better? Thank you. 89,000 units of affordable housing is what we estimate right now to be our deficit here in Gwinnett County. Would anybody guess what the living wage is here in Gwinnett County by the hour? Anybody guess that? Hourly wage? 17? Any others? It's $19 an hour. So think about that and what it takes to live here in Gwinnett County. So there really is a need for affordable housing. We're addressing that, as you saw through the video, with our housing program where we offer a interest-free loan, and it really is making a difference for those families that we serve. Those families that we serve have to demonstrate three things in order to work with us. They have to demonstrate a need, that they're either in a situation that's unsafe, they have to have a need for housing that's affordable, they're either cost burdened, or they're in a situation where it's not safe or they're doubled up. They also have to demonstrate that they will partner with us. They put in 250 hours of sweat equity. If you've heard sweat equity before, that term, Habitat actually created that term. So sweat equity, they have to put in 250 hours of sweat equity, and they also have to go through over 12 hours of classes, life skill classes and financial classes to become homeowners. Finally, they have to be able to demonstrate that they can pay a mortgage, because we do not give houses away. We sell them with an interest-free and a profit-free mortgage. So that gives them the hand up that they need. We also have a new program that we got involved with a few years ago. We started a program called A Brush with Kindness. It's home repairs for the elderly. It's also for veterans and disabled. One of the fastest growing sectors in our community is the elderly. And it's estimated that by 2040 that 1/5 of the whole population in Georgia will be age 60 or more. And within the next year, seniors will outnumber children in Gwinnett County. So there really is a need. We have met seniors that are so low income that they're choosing between eating and between their medication, and there are no funds left to take care of their homes. So that's one program that we've started, and we've really been making an impact. And that's where we would like to give you the opportunity to come out and volunteer over the next year. We're going to have some weekend projects with some elderly and disabled in our community where you can actually come out, swing a hammer or paint or whatever we're doing. So we'd be excited to get you guys involved that way. We have a goal in Gwinnett County to be the leader in affordable housing and addressing this issue. So we hope in the next 3 years to be able to double everything that we're doing and to build more than 40 homes and serve more than 300 families with Brush with Kindness, and actually start a new program with neighborhood revitalization. So we have a campaign that we call Better Homes, Brighter Futures that you'll hear more about as we go through the year. But we'd love for you to be a part of that as well. That quick enough for you? All right. Thanks again. We love being here.
Just a quick note, Mr. Sam DeAntremont, who's to y'all's right, he's going to be my community service chair at Connection Point, so he'll have some nexus. He'll be asking for the sweat equity from y'all. So So we're going to get to our featured speaker, and normally this is an opportunity for me to go and draw on about where this dude went to law school and what this guy's like, and you know, honestly, who better than BJ Pack's spouse, really, right? So she's an attorney herself. I don't know if Judge Ballard's here, but his law clerk, part-time law clerk, is Sandra Shin. So this is his spouse, and I said, you know, Sandra, this would be a unique opportunity to address people. You're a lawyer, like to talk, and this is an opportunity from someone who knows me best, because it's clearly not me. So Sandra, if you don't mind coming up to the podium.
Thank you, Donald. You know, it's so great to see so many members of the various bars here, Asian American community, and other supportive friends. But in a room full of so many successful and outstanding Georgians, it's really hard pressed to find one person that I find to be my favorite. But I admit, I do have one, and that's BJ Pack. Objectively speaking, of course. But it's not just that he's a great husband, nor the fact that he's a wonderful father to our 3 daughters that makes him so special. But it's the fact that he's just a really good guy, trying to honor and do his best work. BJ's been practicing law for over 20 years. And he started out as a young prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office, prosecuting some of America's most hardened criminals and protecting trade secrets for American businesses, such as those at Coca-Cola. In the intervening years, he spent time continuing his practice as complex litigation and white-collar defense, and at firms like Alston & Bird, Schiff Hardin, and Ballard Spahr. And all that while serving 3 terms in the Georgia General Assembly, where he represented District 108 right here in our home county of Gwinnett. And so then in 2017, BJ came full circle and returned to being a federal prosecutor, but this time as a U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia. But there is another job that I think he should perhaps add to his resume, and that's volleyball coach. Because I think it sheds light on his work ethic and his level of commitment to everything that he does. Last fall, to explain, our daughter joined her middle school volleyball team. That's right. And because she's a little younger, and because she's not so tall, she didn't actually get to play too much, so this made her sad. So BJ worked with her, and we even had her join a volleyball club. And so through her hard work and through his coaching, she's gotten to be actually pretty good. But where this story actually takes a surprising turn is the level of commitment that he had in helping her. And, well, I knew that we'd be supportive as parents. You know, watch all her games, cheer her on, and take some photos. But BJ took it a little further, a lot further, actually. He bought all this professional video camera equipment, and he started producing all of this near ESPN level quality videos. And he had all these fancy graphics, and he had all this statistics displayed for all the players, so they could watch the videotapes and get better. And then he actually started volunteer coaching. And then he obtained not 1 certification, but 2 certifications. And then don't even get me started on all the spreadsheets that he created. But this is what BJ does when he does something. He puts his best effort forward in everything. He's not satisfied with just doing a decent job. But I mean, of course, that's what we expect out of all our government leaders. And honestly, any responsible person who wants to do a job well. But because sorry, let me catch my moment. But of course, we expect our government leaders to put forth their best effort, but what that looks like can vary. And so I just want to give you a glimpse of what it looks like for BJ. And I can tell you that as the Chief Federal Law Enforcement Officer, BJ is deeply committed to being the best public servant, the best crime buster he can be for the 46 counties that he represents and helps to protect. So with this in mind, please join me in welcoming U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia, volleyball coach extraordinaire, and my favorite person, BJ Pack.
an Emmy for my volleyball productions. Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad that my wife is morally obligated to say nice things about me. Well, thank you so much for being here today and for the invitation. When Donald first called me, I was a little afraid to answer the phone, particularly because I knew he was becoming the first Korean American president of the Gwinnett Bar Association. At the same time, I knew that I hadn't paid my Gwinnett County bar due yet. Well, everything is serious. You know, Gwinnett County is such a wonderful place to live. And those of you who may not live here but visit often, you know this. It's a fantastic county. But it did let me down twice in my life, and I have to tell you a couple stories. The first is, despite being called for jury duty 3 times, I was not selected. And the last one was a week ago. I was not selected on a civil case, so I feel very empty inside. There's a lot of judges here, so please encourage the lawyers to select me next time. I'm dying to select. And the second thing, of course, is the name of our minor league team. I voted for Buttons. I don't know about you. I think most people did, but I don't know how we got Streckers. So we will be investigating that as a part of our book. So I thought I'd do today, I think some of you have heard a little bit about my presentation, but I have really updated. And what I wanted to do is, for those of you who may not be familiar with the work of the U.S. Attorney's Office, I'm going to take a very brief moment to explain kind of some of the things that we do, a little history of why we do it, and then I want to give you kind of a report of the Department of Justice and the U.S. Attorney's Office and the things that we do. And I think you'll see, as practicing lawyers and policymakers, that there are a lot of things that we handle perhaps might be of interest to you. Let's see if I can make this work. All right, here we go. So, those of you who may not know the U.S. Attorney's Office, we are part of the Department of Justice. However, we were not always part of the Department of Justice. We were created by the Judiciary Act of 1789, the first statute that created the judicial structure in the federal government here, including, of course, created the Office of the Attorney General, whose responsibility only was limited to litigating in the U.S. Supreme Court. And then there was the inferior court, inferior meaning lower, not necessarily not so great. So federal courts, district court, and courts of appeals, and of course, it created the U.S. attorneys for every district. Now, the Supreme Court at the time only had 6 members, and the Attorney General was, a part-time litigant in the Supreme Court. So what would you do with the rest of the country and the representation that the federal government needed? Those actually fell to the U.S. attorneys. So as a result, we too were officially nominated by the President and confirmed by the Senate. Of course, the federal government did not have a part of tax at the time, and of course everybody were part-time, right? Because you're supposed to be limited government. So, but that changed a little bit because lots of litigation started to happen, and then you needed a kind of a law firm to kind of handle all of that litigation, particularly because the U.S. attorneys were paid by a percentage of the cases that we filed. So you can see how much money that they were making. There was reports of one U.S. attorney early on making over $200,000, which I think is equivalent to about $1.6 million. So Congress said, we're going to combine everybody and create a law firm called the Department of Justice and put the Attorney General at the head of the department, and that went away. The nice perk of making commissions went away from the U.S. attorneys. However, because of the way we were created, the U.S. Attorney's offices maintain a tremendous amount of independence from the Department of Justice and, of course, from the Attorney General. So even today, technically, the Attorney General cannot call me up and say, you're fired. It's actually the President who has to fire me. But because of the regulations, we take direction from the Attorney General, and frankly, if the Attorney General called the White House and said we want to remove this U.S. Attorney, I think it would happen. So today, the U.S. Attorney of Northern District of Georgia represents about 6.7 million people. The office has, this is a little dated, we have a little bit over 104 assistant U.S. attorneys, and we have about 10 or 11 special assistant U.S. attorneys, and we have support staff, the equal number, and then we're about the 19th largest district in the United States. Some of the areas of enforcement that you may have heard about, and I want to highlight a couple today, actually about 4. It's changing, because I always laugh, because every time we have a press conference, things like that, like this is one of the highest priorities of the department and the highest priority of the U.S. Attorney's Office. And I think to myself, everything's a priority, right? So everything's a high priority. But these areas are something that we've really devoted dedication and efforts to. The first is, of course, fighting and reducing violent crime. This encompasses a lot of things. It's not really locking up every single criminal that we can find. It's actually a very targeted and data-driven enforcement action. We look at areas in our district and jurisdictions where there and identify certain individuals, certain areas that are suffering from high level of violent crime, shootings and killings and murders and things like that. And then we determine which cases to prosecute. We work with our local prosecutors and local law enforcement to determine who could get the best bang for their buck. And of course, one of the largest drivers of violent crime in Georgia, in our district, is criminal street gangs. And I think you heard that from the state level, of course, in the federal level. In Georgia, however, it's no longer the neighborhood street gangs that are terrorizing communities. It's actually nationalized gangs. Gangster Disciples, the Bloods, Crips, even the Ghostface Gangsters were homegrown here in Georgia. They comprise about 60% of all violent crime in Gwinnett County, and of course, the Northern District of Georgia. So gang enforcement, anti-gang enforcement is one of the top priorities of our office. On the other side of the coin, if you remove somebody from a neighborhood without really thinking about why they went into that problem in the first place, and you put them back into that same neighborhood, same condition, and you expect a different result, it's as Albert Einstein used to say, that's kind of insanity, right? So one thing we're doing is we are intervening when people who are serving their time were about to be released. We invested our resources through our granting program and our partners to get them wrapped around with the social services that are available to give them the best chance not to recidivate. One of the things that we're doing, what we found out is the individuals who are coming out of prison actually needed some mentors and support systems, and even basic things like how do I get a driver's license and how do I get a bank account. Those things are some of the challenges. Housing is a big issue. Housing is probably the number one issue that's facing someone re-entering society. And how do you solve that problem? What we did was we initiated a credible messenger program where former felons who want to mentor, who have completely rehabilitated their life, to be a mentor for them. We engage them up to 6 months before the offender is released. At the same time, every month, every extra couple weeks, they're having mentoring sessions, and then we bring in the family members. What we forget is when they're released and they are dropped into a house living with a family member, the family members are not equipped to handle that change in circumstance. As a result, we bring them in with the great partnership we have with the Georgia Department of Corrections and Georgia Department of Juvenile Justice. We try to go in before they're released to get them wrapped around with all the services that are provided. DOC actually has a great program, thanks to the leadership of Governor Deal, that made it that you get your driver's license when you come out, and also potentially a GED. As a result, the program is so far working very, very well. We graduated our second class of folks who are actually gang-related, who are in there for violent crime, and so far we've had a success rate of well over 90%. They have not, and they're all employed, which is great, and we're hoping that it'll continue. Another area of initiative that you may not be aware of, remember I told you we were supposed to be limited government? Not so limited anymore. We do have an initiative called the Domestic Violence Initiative, and those of you who are active in the policymaking area and the state level understand that under Georgia law, it is not illegal to possess a firearm if you have a TPO against them, nor is it illegal if you have a domestic violence conviction to possess a firearm. As a result, what's happening is, in a domestic situation, police officers are called to the house. The police officer says, interviews the victim says, so-and-so has a gun. The police are helpless in being able to restrain them or take that gun away. However, under federal law, it is illegal to possess a firearm if you have a TPO or if you have even misdemeanor domestic violence program. What we do know is that statistics show that someone who has a TPO entered against them, and the person who stopped the protective order is in danger 400%. The danger increases approximately 400% when that TPO is ordered. And when you add a gun in that mix, and when you have a very volatile emotional situation, the victim is it's a very dangerous situation. Matter of fact, in 2018, I believe we had 88 Georgians who were killed as a result of domestic violence situations. And of course, the local prosecutors and local law enforcement is helpless in that regard. So we are launching at the Department of Justice a domestic violence initiative where we're training the local law enforcement officers. This is an option. Of course, I have 104 prosecutors and 6.7 million people. I can't take every single case. However, there are situations where you really need to call the local law enforcement, call the ATF, and the ATF will come out there and federal law enforcement will pick them up. There's an advantage to this. The reason being is those of you who are prosecutors or defense lawyers understand sometimes domestic violence victims, even though they call the police initially, when it comes time to prosecute, you have a lot of recantation of statements. You also have a reluctance of trying to testify against someone because of the emotional issues. In the federal law, of course, we don't generally need the victim to prosecute because possession of a firearm while you're prohibited is a status crime, and we could prove that. And of course, we would exercise our discretion in the right situation. However, if it's one of those situations where the victim is too scared to do anything about it, to support local law enforcement in prosecution of their abusers, then the federal government could step in. This is something that we're trying to roll out. And those of you who may not know this, I know there's been lobbying going on at the state level to change the law. And of course, part of the initiative is to support that effort of our local law enforcement brethren to try to make sure that the local police and the local prosecutors have the tools necessary to protect the citizens in dangerous situations. Now, we rolled out another thing called the Elder Justice Initiative. This is actually pretty new. You may not know about that. Those of you who get these annoying phone calls on your cell phone that says, hey, this is the IRS, you have a lien against it, you need to call right away. The problem is, a lot of people fall for that trap, and of course, this is costing the society billions of dollars every single year. And more importantly, you'll have these transnational organizations from overseas, particularly India, Nigeria, Philippines, targeting elderly citizens with these type of scams. And the most common one you may have heard of is the tech support scam, right? They will call up and say, hey, look, I work at Microsoft. I noticed that there's a malware on your computer. We need to clean this right away. And of course, a lot of people fall for it. They go in, take all the private information, hack their account, transfer money out. This has become a huge problem. As a result, the Attorney General rolled out an initiative, the Elder Justice Initiative, where we are targeting the transnational organizations, the call centers that are happening in India and the Philippines to investigate, indict, and bring to justice. And we're working in conjunction with the federal law enforcement agency, international law enforcement agencies, and of course our Office of International Affairs, where we're working to extradite them and face justice. He also chose 6 jurisdictions to create a strike force as a concentrated area of federal law enforcement resources. And the Northern District was lucky enough to be selected one of the 6. So we had our first meeting 2 days ago. We're rolling out an initiative where we educate the public on this danger. And number 2, we're going to really use data and all our efforts to bring some of these fraudsters to justice. There's a nice seal. I don't have that yet, but it's a nice seal that we have. The other problem, of course, is opioids. You hear a lot about that. But let me pause here to say that we don't really have necessarily only an opioid problem. We actually have an addiction problem because if you look at the data, that we have drug trafficking, drug addiction going up, every type of drug you can imagine. The opioid epidemic is getting most attention because you see a lot of the overdose deaths. Of course, the stats show that drug-related deaths increased by 16% in Georgia from 16 to 17, and it's costing our state per capita $1,114 per person, man, woman, and child. So if you look at some industry, we're talking about billions and billions of dollars of lost productivity, and of course, not to mention people who are still suffering from addiction, dangerous drugs. What they're doing is the drug traffickers are mixing some of the dangerous drugs with fentanyl and other types of synthetics. Carfentanil on the right here, all you need is 1 grain to overdose. It's actually used as an elephant tranquilizer. Fentanyl, of course, you hear a lot about that and lots of synthetics. The problem is if you don't get the proportion right, because remember 3 milligrams is enough to kill you, you generally end up being dead. And if you look at the toxicology reports of people who overdose and who died as a result of overdose death, there's a lot of mixture of different types of drugs. What's happening is people who are peddling these poison in our streets are mixing fentanyl with other types of drugs that are causing the overdose death. I note here there's kratom. See that? mitrogynine, it's not illegal to have kratom. And we're seeing more and more of that overdose of death related to that. Fake pills, it's very prevalent. People take fake pills. It just looks like Percocet, it looks like have a painkiller. Of course it's not. All you need is a pill press and some cut and a color dye and some fentanyl, and you have a fake pill. And so the reason they're overdosing is if you mix only 2 milligrams per pill, you're not going to overdose, right? But they're not creating these in lab conditions, okay? This is actually a picture of a fentanyl lab. So they're mixing it, they're actually bringing it here and then mixing with other stuff and then pressing pills with it. So you don't have the correct ratios. And every time you hear about an overdose death, I will guarantee you it was someone who missed the mixture. And of course, that results in people overdosing and dying. And frankly, a lot of people who are addicted to opioids are not doing it necessarily for the high. That may be true for initial addiction, but it's actually the withdrawal symptoms they're trying to avoid. That's very, very hard to avoid. So there's a lot of demand for fentanyl. So what's that happening? So the drug trafficking organization south of us is actually taking advantage of that. They're bringing more heroin, they're bringing more fentanyl, and of course they don't want to kill their customers, so they're hiring European, former Eastern Bloc chemists to make fentanyl and fake pills. That's actually, if you look at the blue pills up there, it's fake pills containing fentanyl. Sinaloa cartel, who is responsible for about 80% of the illicit drugs in the United States, are getting very sophisticated. And Atlanta being a distribution hub, they use the same resources that legitimate commerce does. And so the problem is growing. Of course, you could also order fentanyl online, and in the dark net it's becoming a big problem for us. Alphabet is one of the largest online marketplaces. If you think about Amazon and put it in the dark net, that's kind of what it was. We shut it down, of course, the Department of Justice, and we shut down marketplaces all the time. Now, I want to tell you that I think the dark net is probably the next frontier in terms of crime, because you can pretty much buy anything there. This is actually a snapshot of Alphabet. It has a picture of fentanyl. If you look at the bottom left corner, it says original fentanyl HCl, 99.9% pure, and it has a price of 1.02 Bitcoin. It's quite expensive. Now I think Bitcoin runs around $9,000 now, so it's quite expensive. But at the same time, what's interesting is that little star thing there. I talk about this all the time. That's actually like an Amazon seller rating. So there's a lot of fraudsters in the dark net, so they actually rate them, right? So 4.96 out of 5, that's pretty good. That details the real stuff, that's what it says. Of course, this is also a weakness. When we track them down, they want to carry that brand to the next marketplace, and that's a way we could track it's the same person. They keep the same avatar, same fake names. That's one way that we could prove that they in fact did that. Well, remember I told you about the changing marketplace? If you look at kind of the heroin here, at the border, when the southwest border, when the Mexican cartels are bringing it in, look at the heroin and the seizures in fiscal year 18. It went up significantly, right? Look at fentanyl on the national seizure, not the border, but the national seizure. We're talking about Postal Service is being used to bring in fentanyl from China or other places. So that has kind of significantly gone up as well. So speaking of the dark web, cybercrime, of course. I'd be remiss if I don't mention to you kind of the next frontier of crime. Cybercrime is a big, big problem in the country. We face it every single day. Matter of fact, as lawyers, you should know that we're starting to see law firms being targeted for their clients' trade secrets, potential merger deals, so insider trading. So the SEC and I have a program where we market monitor to make sure that in fact the breaches are not related to the activity, increase in trading activity. Malware and ransomware attacks are prevalent. Those of you have heard recently, the state of Georgia has suffered many malware attacks. I could tell you that it's a variant of the same malware that we've seen before that also hit the city of Atlanta. We're on it, we kind of know who it is. And of course, the dark marketplace, anything you want to buy illegally, you can go to the dark net and buy. If you look at the left side here, it has all the categories of things that you can buy, programs, malware, software, how-to guide, drug products. And of course, on the right, you see fresh credit card from USA, Visa, and MasterCard. Chances are that your personal identifying information and credit card information is in the dark web, is being sold, and darknet is very, very, it promotes that. Of course, it's kind of a whack-a-mole. Every time we shut down a marketplace, they go deeper and deeper into the darknet. And those of you who may not know, darknet was actually created by the U.S. government. It was actually used to share state secrets from spies overseas. But what you see in the legitimate commerce world is only a fraction of what you see in the darknet. So it's a big problem because it's going dark, and of course they use Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, which is outside the regulation of financial services industry right now. On top of that, you also see the problem of encryption and changing technology, which makes detection and investigation and also prosecution very, very difficult. This is Backpage.com is another marketplace the government shut down. Of course, this is a snapshot, an exhibit that we used in the trial recently. They're selling minors for sex. And so darknet's another problem because you can buy anything that you want in the darknet. And these individuals, they say they're 18, but they're actually minors. Terrorism, of course, national security is a big issue. This is a recent case that we charged Mr. Taheb for planning to blow up the White House and other federal monuments. And so JTTF, Joint Terrorism Task Force, who's operating here, is working very hard. We have several investigations going on right now. While we do not have foreign terrorists operating or threatening our district, what we do have is homegrown violent extremists, meaning people who are radicalized through certain rhetoric, particularly the white nationalists. The FBI doesn't use that term anymore, but we do track every single one. We have hateful rhetoric. Matter of fact, we've done pretty well in terms of tracking and following up on leads for every type of social media post that talks about threat or going to a high school or middle school to shoot up. And we usually track them down, and thankfully, most of the time, it's some young kid blown off steam, being stupid on social media, but we don't take chances with that. Lastly, I want to talk to you about the China Initiative. It's brand new. No one has ever heard this. The China Initiative. China actually, as a country, particularly their military arm, the People's Liberation Army, poses the greatest threat to our economy and our national security. There's a quote from Chris Wray, who's also a fellow Lenton. Their theory is they want to rob, replicate, and replace the United States economic advantage. And I'll tell you, here's the roadmap to theft, China. So they have laid out every 5 years, they have a plan. There are 10 sectors that are really focused on in this regard. We have robotics and a lot of technology, the DRAMs, the transportation, aircraft, energy. And what they do is they look at every single industry here by using their corporate side and also their spy and the military side to infiltrate and steal some of the advantages that the United States have. For example, economic espionage, you may have heard this. China is responsible for more IP theft from the US companies than any other country. 80% of all federal cases that we've done, right, it benefits the Chinese state. What the Chinese government does is they subsidize and support the private sector over there, so it's a quasi state-sponsored entity, and 60% trade secret theft case has some nexus to China. And so they're stealing the the intellectual property to gain advantage. The talent programs, that thing that just flipped there, that's actually the logo for the 1,000 Talent Program. And what they're generally doing is not only are they subsidizing corporate, they're recruiting US educated workers, particularly of Chinese descent, pay them a lot of money and title to recruit them. So the research universities here, who they receive their PhD, some of them work on top secret projects. They are, in fact, recruited to share their secrets, also encourage them to steal secrets, and you'll see a lot of enforcement actions against folks who are Chinese nationals who are here working for private companies that work on sensitive projects or at universities for stealing state secrets or economic espionage. What have they stolen? The better question is what have they not stolen, right? There's some cases here, I don't want to go into too many details about that, but the fact of the matter is they're stealing microchips technology, DRAMs. Of course, the MSS case is kind of famous, and wind energy and energy technology that we have, because they are in fact trying to take advantage of that. We're talking about billions and billions of dollars. They're estimating 540 billion, and then it's really threatening. And I'll show you this chart is what is really surprising to me. This tells you in 2004 the majority of the largest companies in the world were United States based. Look at all the red on the right. it's a span of 14 years. I'll tell you, Chinese are not great at innovation. How is it that they're able to grow companies so fast in 14 years that they have approximately half of the largest companies in the world? It's through theft of trade secrets. And they do this in multiple ways. One way, you guys might see this, you'll see some innocuous kind of LinkedIn invite from someone, right? That's one way that they kind of approach. If you look at it, they generally target people working in the defense industry, and they recruit through all kinds of incentives. It inevitably ends up that person had access to some national security secret or some state secret or some sensitive information by a company, and then it ends up in the hands of the Chinese. This chart is actually very, very interesting, and I hope that this sends an alarm. One of the goals of the China Initiative is to slow them down. Right now, of course, we're using all our power in the government, not just prosecuting individuals who are participating in this, but we use the diplomatic power, the leverage and economic power that we have to put pressure on Chinese government to stop doing these type of acts. But prosecutions do matter in the sense that these are important enforcement tools to discourage Chinese misbehavior. And a lot of times, those of you who may handle trade secret theft in cases like that will know that it's very sensitive for your clients. That it's very dangerous because to prosecute somebody in public, you need to that they stole a secret is to tell the public what the secret is. That's called gray mail problem. It's very difficult, but at the same time, it does matter. And we have a holistic government approach. The State Department, the Defense Department, and of course, Commerce and DOJ are all on board to try to stop this. And what we need is you as the advocates and also the community to stop your clients and you from becoming a victim. Cyber is a big problem, a lot of hacking. If you see some of their name and shame indictments that brought by the Department of Justice, you'll see that a member of the People's Liberation Army is responsible for hacking, stealing all kinds of data. The latest, of course, is the Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield that was indicted out of Indiana. You would imagine how many people, private information got stolen out of there. It remains to be seen and classified what the Chinese government is doing with all that data on our citizens. What the FBI and law enforcement want is you to be an active partner in helping to protect not just your clients, but our nation. I won't go through the benefits of cooperation. But in short, the office and the department has a rich history, and the mission has grown from just handling piracy cases under the Constitution to something much, much broader. Everything from domestic violence initiative all the way to national security. And the mission of our office always remains the same. It's to pursue justice. And I always end this thing with the last quote here: justice is our name, justice is our mission. That's a quote that was in a letter that was written to me by the former Deputy Attorney General after I became U.S. Attorney. And I could tell you that despite what you may see in politics, the people in our office in law enforcement, regardless who's in power, that their mission and their duty and their loyalty is to doing justice every way and every time and doing the right thing. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I probably scared you a little bit with what's going on, but that's kind of what we're working on in the office. Thank you.
So we're running into the end of the hour here, or at least the bottom of the hour. I don't know if there's any other business, just at least from the Gwinnett Bar, and that we need to take care of. Other than that, I just want to thank my board, again, for helping put this program together. This is a fantastic turnout. And of course, Bonnie Yoon, my former colleague. Other than that, I believe the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.